Have you seen Duke's defense? I mean, just watch this play. At first, it might seem like a normal college set. A few ball screens, a post-up, some exchanges, but something unusual is happening underneath all of this. After 3 ball screens, cuts, and motion, Duke has erased every sign of an advantage, and Kansas finally settles for a tough mid-range pull-up without ever touching the paint. And what you might have missed is that Duke switched 6 different times in that one possession. Yes, 6 times. The matchups at the start of the possession are completely different from the matchups at the end. And this isn't chaos, it's not gambling, it's not lazy switching either. This is the #1 defense in college basketball, a team mastering switching in a way college teams rarely can, blending NBA level connectivity with old school rim protection principles. A defense it's time to break down, so let's dive in. Now, before we get into Duke's defensive scheme, let's talk about the results because the numbers are ridiculous. In a college landscape where scoring is going up, Duke is holding teams under 60 points a night. And when the competition gets tougher, well, they get even better. And when you watch the film, you understand why. Duke isn't just switching randomly, switching is what allows their defense to control the game. Here's a perfect example. Florida runs multiple handoffs and exchanges, but never even breaks the 3-point line, and Duke uses their switching to force everything east to west. And at the end of the shot clock, well, now Duke has one of their best defenders at the point of attack, and their big still at the rim, ready to finish the play. That's what switching does for Duke. It minimizes advantages and forces teams into stalled out possessions. But it gets even better. Watch this play from Michigan State. They set a back screen with their 5-man, which Duke doesn't want to switch. They want to switch 1 through 4. And most college teams in this situation will give up the back cut or get switched into a brutal mismatch. But Duke switches this back screen with the weak side corner. That's an NBA style solution executed almost instantly. Then they flow into a ball screen, Duke hard hedges, rotates behind it, scrambles out to the shooter, and forces a tough 3 and secures the rebound. That connected switching shows that Duke has developed an awareness and IQ for their switching scheme that most college teams never do. And we aren't even at the best parts yet, because if a team switches 1 through 4, you would expect opponents to hunt the mismatch, especially in the post. But against Duke, well, that hasn't worked at all, because Duke's players are wired to constantly solve and correct mismatches. Watch how they handle this roll rise action. They switch the initial ball screen, but then immediately switch the roll rise behind it, allowing their bigger player to take the roller and their smaller player to stay high on the perimeter, all with hardly any hesitation. We even see triple switching, again taking the roller with the bigger matchup and scramming the little out to the perimeter. And the possessions where it becomes more complex, it looks even easier for Duke. They don't avoid mismatches, they solve them. And dare I say, it reminds me a little bit of the switching powers of Golden State during their championship runs. But let's not get too carried away, because when we go back to watching Duke, well, they have something else in store if an offensive team is successful enough to hunt the mismatch. In fact, Florida tried this over and over again. They would get the switch, roll the mismatch, and high-low flash the opposite big. But Duke uses something called dropping the flash. The big stays anchored at the rim, not being pulled up to the ball, but covering the mismatch, forcing that opposite big to make a play in space. It's not complicated, it's calculated. They're willing to give up those mid-range jump shots or push shots from that big in exchange for protecting the paint and the mismatch. And I won't pretend like Duke can do no wrong, but even when they don't switch a play perfectly, when that slip is open or that roll, well, the help side is almost always there. Here you can see the slip is wide open, but Duke is in perfect help position before it is even a read. The help defender takes the slip and Duke ends up forcing a turnover. Here's another. The roller is open for a split second, just enough to tempt the ball handler until he sees Duke's help defender already there. The passer then has to change midair, and another possession of the offense not even breaking the three-point line. And on this backscreen lob that catches Duke asleep, well, their big flies over anyway to protect the rim. Because they're not just switching, they're prioritizing protecting the rim too. So far, we've seen how Duke can switch on the ball, fix matchups off the ball, and protect the rim when all else fails. But what we haven't talked about yet is what that switching and rim protection allows them to do when it comes to being aggressive, especially against dribble handoffs. This is where Duke has tried to blow up plays. I mean, watch this one. They not only switch, but they switch to deny the handoff, leaving the big on an island to make his second and third read. Even without switches, Duke has made it a point this year to be aggressive at blowing up handoffs and denying them altogether. And this might lead you to believe Duke is always aggressive one pass away, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Outside of dribble handoffs, Duke is often crowding gaps and shrinking driving lanes, because just like they're switching, Duke won't let you go isolation against them and leave one of their own on an island. Remember those old UVA teams that made it impossible to drive against? Well, Duke is doing a similar thing, shutting off penetration one pass away, plugging those gaps, which means they're getting there early and showing help before the drive even happens. So between blowing up handoffs but also packing in the gaps, you get this interesting contrast. A defense that can be aggressive without being reckless, a defense that can pack the paint without giving up advantages, and a defense that can switch 1 through 4 and still have elite positional discipline. That balance is what makes Duke look so connected. But the final piece of the switching system, and maybe the most unique, is how they defend ball screens with their 5-man. Because Duke doesn't want to switch with their big, and let's be honest, when you have someone like Patrick II, who is an elite rim protector big, well, you wouldn't want him leaving the paint either. So Duke uses him strategically in pick and rolls, and everything flows around him. Against certain matchups, Duke will hard hedge aggressively, instantly cutting off the ball handler and forcing the action away from penetration, relying on their help side position to cover up openings and scramble the kickouts. But other times, Duke wants to keep their big way back in drop positioning to protect that basket, oftentimes deeper than most college teams will ever play. This keeps the rim sealed and invites one of the least efficient shots in college basketball, the contested pull-up, while eliminating layups and lob threats. Especially in Spain action, one of the hardest actions to guard, a high ball screen with a back screen for the roller, well, Duke handles it beautifully. They super drop the big to avoid the screens and traffic and leave him planted at the rim, and allows everyone else to stay connected through the action. But no defensive system is perfect, not even Duke's. And if there's one matchup that can stretch this scheme, it's a big who can shoot. Because when Duke is playing in their drops or hedge, well, a big that can pop and shoot is always going to be hard to recover. And a shooting big will also complicate that drop the flash protection on those post-ups. In fact, Michigan State's big hit multiple threes against them, one of the few moments Duke looked uncomfortable on defense this year. But here's the honest truth. This weakness is real, but it's rare. There aren't many 5-men in college basketball who can consistently pick and pop for 3, and when Duke does run into them, they can always default to switching 1 through 5 because those big men who can shoot, well, they usually aren't a huge threat to post up anyway. So yes, the shooting big can stress their system, but it might not even break it, because beyond the switching, the coverage, and matchups, Duke's defense always seems to make the biggest plays at the biggest moments. I mean, down the stretch in that Florida game, Duke's defense really closed it out. A huge block and save to protect the lead, and then on the last play of the game, an aggressive switch to force the turnover and win them the game. And throughout every game you watch of Duke's, there's so much hidden value in the little things. Great point of attack defense, great box outs to finish possessions, rim protecting blocking shots, and charges on the ball. You don't build the number one defense in college basketball by switching alone, you build it by connecting every piece of the system together. Switching 1 through 4 gives Duke versatility, anchoring the 5 men gives them rim protection, and blending the two gives them a defensive system that is almost impossible to crack. Because Duke isn't just switching, they're mastering switching in a way college teams rarely do, blending NBA level connectivity and IQ with old school rim protection principles, and turning games into half-court puzzles that opponents can't solve. So if you love defense, you found the right place. Make sure to like this video and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you're looking for another college team to be broken down. And if you're a player who wants to improve their own defense, well, make sure you check out the Lockdown Academy. Over 11 years of coaching, training, and breaking down the best defenders all in one platform, all designed to transform your game. Or check out one of our newest courses, Built for Stops, a 5-day sprint into unlocking the mental side of defense. Join today with the links in the description below, and I'll see you there. Thanks again for watching. As always, I'm Coach Mike with Lockdown Defense. Keep up the hard work.